You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Welcome to Making Data Simple. I think we are on every venue out there, iTunes, Spotify, IBM's Big Data Hub. Please leave us a rating, provide ideas at almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Please follow me on Twitter at amartin_V. And yes, that V stands for the fifth. Believe it or not, I'm the fifth. It gets me into all kinds of trouble when I'm trying to get on a flight. People don't get what the fifth is. Henry VIII would have had a hell of a time flying, I can tell you. And speaking of Henry VIII, I have somebody from the UK, from Britain. He is Mr. Joe Pavitt. He's a master inventor, emerging technology specialist with IBM Research in Hursley. And let's see if I can do this justice, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe. But like I said, master inventor, 6 years, master in aerospace engineering. Focus of 50-50 across aerospace and sports industries. I don't know how you get that job. That's a pretty good gig. Also, artificial intelligence, data visualization, augmented and virtual reality. You must also just say, hey, look, I'm not going to do any of the boring stuff. So sounds like you got the perfect job, my man.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It keeps me busy. That's for sure.
Well, welcome. I know you look, and you've got a long career to go. I mean, pretty young. I think you started as an intern 7 years ago. Now you've got 13 patents, master inventor. I'll stop there. I'll let you introduce yourself. You've already made me feel bad, so I've got to sit and think about what I'm going to do about my career.
Yeah. So thank you for the introduction. It's nice to meet you. I studied aerospace engineering at university. Whilst at university, did an internship at IBM, which is called Extreme Blue. It actually runs all around the world. And in IBM Europe, they kind of have this big competition across all the different countries. It runs every year. I did it in 2012. And at the end of that was offered a full-time job back at IBM. So I finished my master's and then came and joined IBM. And after about a year, 18 months in IBM, joined IBM Research and have been involved in a whole range of different technologies. I'm very fortunate that I kind of get to play for a living. So any cool new ideas I come up with, get the freedom to go and explore them, work with clients across varying industries. But given my background in aerospace, that's kind of where I started my interest and work. Done work with the likes of NASA, the International Space Station. And then I've made the natural transition into sports. That's been another passion of mine for as long as I can remember. So I'm fortunate enough that IBM do a lot of work in the sports industry, and particularly over the last 18 months or so, that's really where I've started to explore the use of data, conversational interfaces in and around data in sports.
So what sports are you passionate about?
So I got brought up playing rugby, football, or soccer, I guess I should say, apologies, and cricket. When I was about 11, I started playing a lot of basketball as well. So I was playing competitively at county level, or kind of the equivalent of state level, I guess, for basketball throughout my secondary school, high school. I'm going to have to keep doing the English to US translations, aren't I? So that's the general path. So I got brought up in and around sports a lot. Like I say, fortunate enough now that I get to live that for a living, do that for a living, sorry.
So you can be a jock and a nerd at the same time. That's fantastic.
Very much so. Definitely. And that was very much my reputation at school as well.
a jock nerd, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
You must have been fighting off the women or something, because they would love that. You're going to be rich and you can play sports. It's all good.
Well, I'm happy married now. Happy married now.
So you did well. All right. Very good. Very good. So let's have a discussion, just like we're at a bar. Speaking of bar, I got to tell you, let me ask you this. If we're sitting at the bar right now, what drink of choice do you have in your hand right now?
So that's an interesting question, because I actually don't drink alcohol.
Oh, that's because you're a sports guy. You're drinking chocolate milk.
Honestly, it actually is. Yeah, I got into the habit when I was in my teens. I would very rarely ever drink because I was playing stupid amounts of hours of sports a week, and playing each of them at quite decent levels. So drinking was just never really an option. And I just got into the habit and went off to university, and even then, kind of just carried on in that same path. And it'd be such a big deal for me now to start drinking. Like even when I got married, everyone's like, "Oh, you got to have champagne on your wedding day," and I can't exactly tell the story that the day I started drinking was the day I got married. So yeah, it's something that never really happened actually.
Well, so then what do you have in your hand then? You got a tea? What?
I know, but probably just a Coke or a soft drink of some kind. Nothing too fancy,
Well,
really.
soft drink is not exactly healthy.
No, that's true. That is true. But I was allowed soft drinks, so it was the alcohol that was a bit of a no-go early on.
All right, fair enough. So you drink your soft drink. You can have a Coke or something in your
Oh
hand.
yeah, you
I'm
you
gonna,
feel
I'm
free
gonna,
to
I'm
drink
gonna go with
away.
an IPA. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go with
yeah.
an IPA. And
Oh
hey,
yeah,
if I'm in England, I'm probably gonna go with a pull beer too. We call those warm beers over here. I love them. Some people don't. I think they're great.
oh yeah, very popular.
Anyway, all good. By the way, see, the difference between you and I is I'd show up at football practice. The coach would look at me. I'd be sweating profusely. He'd go, "You're dehydrated, aren't you?" I'd say,
Uh,
I'll be fine. I'm just
Give me five
I'm
minutes.
going to get a lot of water. Yeah. He was usually right too. All right. Hey, look, you've got 13 patents. Is that correct, or you've got even more now?
Yeah, I think it's probably even more now. Actually, I think I'm probably in the region of the high teens, somewhere in that ballpark.
So give me an example of a couple of the patents that you found that are most significant or that you're most proud of.
It's interesting. So I've got a few different reasons. One of the approaches that I like to take when inventing or coming up with new ideas is this approach that I called "what annoys you." So just live your life as in very conscious of things that annoy you. And annoyingly, you can't patent solutions to people, but technical problems you can solve. So anything that annoys you technically, I always just write it down on a post-it note. And maybe once a week or once every other week, I will just bring those ideas together. We have a group of us based in the UK that will meet up and discuss the things that have annoyed us and what technical solutions can we find to solve those problems. And it's very similar to actually now how I take that approach in the work that I do with down data visualization or data analysis. It's you really want to try and provide a seamless experience in anything and everything you do. And that's what's actually led to a lot of my patents. So I've had patents in and around just making something as simple as email a little bit easier to use. Particularly, I think I've got one focused in and around being caught in an email like reply all thread that you don't want to be involved in. So it will automatically just, you can hit a button and it will just exclude you unless you're mentioned or a topic of interest that you actually care about gets brought up again, and then you can get automatically looped back in. I've got a lot around augmented reality. So a lot around user interaction of augmented reality, and how that can be improved and become more seamless. It's something that, especially when augmented reality kind of really first came to the public market a few years ago, was quite a lot of friction in that. So that's something I've actually researched and done a lot of work in.
Dude, it sounds like you're just playing all day.
And you're not wrong, to be fair. I've somehow managed to convince someone to pay me for it as well, so it's quite good.
Yeah, I guess so. So how do you define success then, though?
That's hard. How do I define success? Customer feedback, as cheesy as it sounds for me, like I always do something with the user in mind, or trying to basically, I want someone to turn around and go, "Oh man, that's cool." Like that has helped me, or that is just generally that's cool. I want to be able to be on that frontier of technology. I grew up like addicted to sci-fi and all that kind of thing, right? It's technology is a really, really powerful tool to change lives. As grand and as cheesy as that sounds, I genuinely believe that. And a lot of the opportunities that I've been fortunate enough to have at IBM enable me to make that impact. And whether that's on the scale of just on a football team scale, which is no doubt what will come up in discussion later on, or soccer team, all the way up to things like improving the recovery after a natural disaster, and initiatives like IBM have done with Call for Code that I've been involved in the past. So any of those kind of scales of improvements we can make on people's lives is what I'm in it for.
Well, look, if anything you can do to rid myself of the enormous amount of email, I would be greatly appreciated. I'm very surprised there aren't more patents around email, ton of machine learning, automated redirection of notes, etc. Because it's still, when it comes down to it, it's still a bunch of stuff in the inbox that comes in for the most part. I mean, they bettered it some, but I think there's a lot more work we can do there.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really quite surprising, actually, when you think about that. Like, technology is very advanced, right? And if you go to the general public and say, oh, you've got this particular technology or that particular technology, people go, oh yeah, that's great, and it just works the way it is. But everything can always be improved, right? Any user experience or any interaction with any technology can always be improved. And so I think that approach on life, when you mentioned about what's the measurement of success, it's quite difficult to be satisfied sometimes, because actually you're always looking to how things can be better and how things can be improved. So that can be a slightly negative side of the approach, but it keeps me busy.
Well, let me ask you this. This may be a different answer. How does your boss define success?
That's very true. That is a question that I'm not sure. So actually, unfortunately enough, that our department within IBM, we aren't responsible for making money. We aren't necessarily responsible for hitting particular business requirements or any that kind of thing. We do get a lot of flexibility to go and explore and have conversations with clients that excite people. And that really is the key difference, right? My boss will want people talking about the technology that I build. And whether that's like with yourself on this podcast, or whether that's in the media, whatever it is, like, part of our job is to wow people and to make improvements on people's lives. So generally, if you're getting people talking about the stuff that you've built, you've done a good job.
Great. So I'm helping with your performance evaluation. I feel like I'm having
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. So one of the most exciting projects that I've learned about is your work with Leatherhead F.C. in English football. Now, I'm still learning English football in that, it's soccer over here for us. My daughter's played extensively and competitively. I'm still not a fan of the offsides rule. We could have a long chat about that. But I get the need for it, but I also have I struggle with it, particularly when they miss it like half the time. But anyway, I know you worked with you worked to implement AI into training, game tactics, etc. Sports obviously excite me as well. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I imagine most listeners won't know who Leatherhead Football Club are, and I can safely say that because I didn't know who they were until I got into this project, and I'm a big football fan. So they actually operate in the 7th tier of English football. So unlike a lot of American sports, with football in sports generally in the UK, you have the promotion and relegation scheme. So any team at a very low level, if they do well enough, can end up in the top league, which in our case would be the Premier League. And if you get relegated 7 times from the Premier League, you end up in Leatherhead Football Club's division. And for context, like, the average attendance to a Leatherhead game is in the region of 300 people. Their budget was actually one of the lowest in the league, and very, very low in comparison to any other sports that you consider in America or anything like that. So they were really up against it. And the work that we actually did was, how could we use IBM Watson and AI in general to assist a club like that in their performance? And there were varying different approaches that we took, but fundamentally it was an incredibly successful project. They actually began the season, like I say, with one of the lowest budgets. We came in after 4 or 5 games, and at the time they were sat 21st out of 22 teams. They only won 1 game, lost 4 of them. At the end of the season, after our input and working alongside the team, they actually finished the team in 7th place. They rose up the league huge amounts, had a really, really successful season. narrowly missed out on the playoffs, which would have given them the opportunity to get promoted. And they even went on like a 10-game winning streak. It was a really, really enjoyable project and season to be involved in.
So hold on for a second. All right, so I got it. Just to make sure I understand the logistics here. There's 7 tiers. Is that the lowest tier, or are there more tiers below that?
Oh, in the English football, I think there's like 15. You can keep going, but when you get down to that level, you've got like one man and his dog on the sideline watching the game. So you don't really get. You could argue there's still the tiers of English football, but it almost doesn't count.
So if they win, or what constitutes them being able to go to, like, I presume, the 6th tier?
Yeah, so the way the league works is if you finish in first place, you automatically next season will be playing in the tier above. If you finished in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th, you would then go through to a playoff. And so 2 teams play the other 2 teams, and then the winner of those 2 games play each other. The winner of that one game would then actually get promoted. And so 2 teams from that 22 team league would end up in the following division. So yeah, Leatherhead finished, I think, 7th. So they were just 2 places outside of the playoff places, at which point they would have had a chance to get promoted.
So what's the ultimate destination then? First tier and then becomes professional somehow in some way?
Yeah, so they are actually semi-professional. So at Leatherhead, most of them are shop assistants, they're plumbers, they're builders, they're students, earning something in the region of like £50 to £100 a week. Like that's their wage at the Leatherhead. Whereas if you get promoted generally once or twice, you do start seeing a lot more professional football players, and in the region of like maybe £20,000-30,000 a year, probably in the lower 20s, is the sort of wage you're looking at. But you get probably up to the Premiership, right? The first tier of English football is the Premier League. Then you're talking silly money.
And we are talking soccer here, right? In my definition.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, when you said Leatherheads, it makes me think of rugby. But
so Leatherhead is actually it's a town in England. So Leatherhead is a place. So it's Leatherhead Town FC.
Got it. So what? Give me an example of the machine learning AI solutions that you implemented for the team.
So we put it across 2 primary columns as such. The first one was around opposition scouting, and then the second one was around their own team's performance. So I'll start with the second one, actually, their own team's performance. One of the challenges that we had was, I mentioned earlier, right? They're plumbers, they're builders, even the manager and the coach, they aren't doing this full time, right? Some of them don't even get paid. So they are not necessarily technical people. Whereas football or soccer is becoming a very technical sport. I'm very much following a lot of the American sports in that regard, with NFL and the NBA very much in advance in terms of the analysis that they will do. Within soccer in the UK, one of the challenges is how can you make this data accessible to people that are not technical? And they know football. They know football or soccer inside out, right? They can tell you and talk to you about that for days and days and days. But what they don't understand is how to create a graph in Excel, or create a graph in whatever analysis software you want to use, or be able to do filtering on that particular data. So the bridge that we made was utilizing IBM Watson, the staff, and originally we designed this for the coaches. The coaches could go in and ask a question to Watson, for example, or a query to Watson. So, for example, how do we best attack against a particular team? Like, how do we play when we play a particular formation? Do we score more goals down the left wing or the right wing? Which particular players are most influential in my team? All of those kind of questions could be asked by the coach, who doesn't then need to have technical knowledge, he just needs to have football knowledge. And then Watson Assistant and IBM Watson would be able to then go in and process that language, understand the intent of their language, and go, here is the data that I think best represents the answer to your question. I will format it in the right way. I will visualize it in the right way. It would also produce video evidence as well. So we had video data of the games. So if I've said, do I score more goals down the left or the right? It might return me a customized video playlist of the goals I've scored from the left wing or the right wing, or both. But the idea was, and like I say, the title of this podcast is ideal. It is making data simple. It's making it accessible. It's making it easy to understand for people that are not technical.
Yeah. Makes sense. So this is like truly augmented intelligence. You take the data that you have. Where do you get all the data, by the way?
So we actually worked with the base event data is actually produced by a company called Opta, OPTA, who provide the fact that there was a tackle and there was a pass and there was a shot. What we actually also then did with Watson was train a machine learning algorithm to identify within that sequence of events, when does a play start and when does a play end? And it's easy to identify, for example, if a player is doing a throw-in, right? Because it's a static start to a game, and it's easy to identify the end when the ball goes out of play. Where it gets more complex is actually in the instances where, let's say, a player has intercepted the ball, but they only kept the ball for a second, and then the other team recovered it again. Well, did that constitute the change of a play? Is it actually that interception was actually just part of the bigger play that the opposition had? So there's some really interesting angles. It's quite a fluid sport to analyze. So Watson's understanding of a play and the context of a play was really, really valuable when conducting the analysis.
Does Watson actually watch the video and determine and gather data?
So Opta provide that data. So they actually just have people sat in the crowd pressing buttons every time things happen. And they do that at scale. They do that up to the Premier League level, not just in soccer, but also in rugby. They actually do it for the NFL, the NBA, the NHL. So what Watson was using is the underlying data that Opta would produce, which was timestamped. We also then had the video, and so we knew when the kickoff was happening in the video. We could align that quite easily. But the key piece that Watson was providing is that context of when did a play start, when did a play end, and then we had another model that would identify the type of play. So, for example, a counter-attack or a set-piece free kick that was a direct shot on goal, a short corner, a long corner, whatever else you might define it as.
It seemed like there'd be a great opportunity for visual recognition to alleviate the need for manual effort for those folks sitting in the stands doing all this stuff, though. I always finish with the lightning round. This is where we get to know you just a little bit.
Okay.
So what a lightning round is as it states is just to riddle off some quick answers. Doesn't have to go. I mean, can be even one line answer. Go in as far as you want, but it's intended to be fast. That's all.
Sure.
So I got a few questions I want to ask you.
No
all
problem.
right. The first one's going to be a little longer, and then the rest ones will be shorter. Given your driving research, you're living the dream, as we already established. Walk me quickly through your day. What does your day look like?
It varies on a day-by-day basis and a week-by-week basis, depending on what I'm working on. But any ideas that get thrown my way, any problems I see, any customers that approach me, my job generally is to explore, innovate, create, invent, any of those buzzwords, and make something cool and emerging.
How did you get to a master inventor so quickly? What has it been? Is it 6 years, really?
Yeah, so I think I got that after about 4 or 5 years of being at IBM, or after the internship. So I was really fortunate. I mentioned Extreme Blue as an internship, and I can't speak highly enough of that internship at IBM. They really encourage invention, innovation. It's a really intense 12-week summer internship. You get given a client and you just get told to go, right? The interns are in charge of that project. And innovation is at its core. So in that environment, you generally thrive. And that really inspired me to push that same environment when I came back in my full-time day job. And not all of my patents are related to my day job, actually, probably more often than they're not related. So that blue sky thinking, that time away from your desk to kind of go, what crazy imaginative thing can I come up with? That really, really helps fill out the time, but also come up with some great ideas.
What are you most proud of, discounting family, because we're all proud of family, but in professional life, what are you most proud of?
The fact that I get to say that I work on something that I love. As cheesy as that sounds, but I've been fortunate enough.
It's a good answer. Hey, if you could interview anybody from your life, living, dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a question. My immediate answer that came to my head would be Elon Musk.
Yeah. Okay. Why?
Because he's crazy. He thinks out the box. I would love to just have a conversation and understand what goes on in his brain, because I think he has a lot of good intentions, doesn't always go about them the right way, but has a lot of good intentions and is trying to make a real difference, particularly in the aerospace industry. And so, yeah, to sit down and have a conversation with that guy. I'm also a big fan of Tesla and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think he's doing some really cool things.
Isn't that the way it goes, though? There's always a fine line of crazy, but the line of distinction between crazy and genius is
absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
In fact, you got to be a little crazy to do some of this stuff. I look at the leaders in our world right now, and they all seem a little crazy to me.
I'm not sure how many of them are geniuses either, though. So I think they might sit on the crazy side more than the genius side.
So what do you work towards in your free time? What do you do in your free time? I got to believe it's something sports, but I'm not going to give you the answer for you. But
no, so I do play sports. I play soccer and basketball in my spare time. I really enjoy animation. So a few years ago, it's something I've always been interested in, but never thought, I can just go and learn that. I've got a few things like that I like to do, but animation is something that I really have picked up. So there's an open source software called Blender that I've kind of just self-taught. So I do 3D modeling, particularly like Star Wars vehicles and that kind of fun stuff, just because it's quite a nice inspiration that I really enjoy doing. So designing lightsabers and whatever else, and working eventually towards kind of doing full cinematic animations.
Do you have the same 24-hour days that everybody else does? That's what I want.
I do, yes. It's quite difficult to balance it all. And it certainly goes in phases, like the animation stuff, for example, I might not get to for a month or so, but then I'll blitz it for a week in the evenings when I'm not doing other things. So, it can certainly be a balancing act.
How do you learn?
I like learning from people, but actually more often than not now, Blender, for example, I've learned everything through YouTube. The YouTube tutorial community for Blender is phenomenal. Things like technical solutions, I have to have a project. So if I'm learning a new piece of technology or a new language, I have to have a project in mind, because I find that's my motivation. I don't generally just like following a tutorial for a tutorial's sake. I have to have an idea or something else that's generally sparked the reason why I'm trying to learn it.
All right, so this is a case of would you rather, this or that. Aerospace or sports?
I can't answer that.
You've got to fall over one side of the fence.
I would go generally sports, I think.
All right, football or American football?
Oh, football. Sorry.
That's okay. We can have that debate later. Football or any of the other sports you mentioned?
Oh, that's a good question. To watch, I really enjoy rugby and football, but to play basketball or football.
Yeah, I would have similar answers. I have differ for what I like to watch from which I like to play. You know Star Trek?
I do.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars all day.
All day long. All right. Well, Star Wars or any other sci-fi.
Ooh, I'm a big Star. I do quite enjoy Star Wars. To be fair, I think I would have to stick with Star Wars on that one.
All right. Hey, Joe, this has been great. Like I said, I think I've got to maybe a third, maybe a little bit over a third of the questions I had for you. But that's an indication of how interesting the discussion was. I appreciate you being here today. I know the viewership's gonna love it. So thank you. I hope you finish your tea. I had to finish 2 or 3 beers by now. This is great.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. It was really interesting.
All right. Thank you all. And again, for all you listeners, tell us how we're doing. Provide us ideas on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. And until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. Later.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit ibmbigdatahub.com/podcasts to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, over and out.